我接下来问一个问题，就是关于这个 SAS 的这个组织架构和运作方式的问题。那么这是它跟传统的军队其实非常不一样的地方。应该说 SAS 的诞生就是一个异类吧，完全是一个颠覆式的一个创新。其实它不是这种传统军队的管控性的这种指令体系，它是建立在这个信任基础上一种授权一种机制。所以我记得你在书中讲过一句话，就是 SAS 总部的第一个任务，首要的任务，就是为了让作战中队更自由、更高效的去运作。那么作战中队呢，可以根据任务意图来独立判断、独立决策，来自己设计并且完成任务。核心就是一种授权、信任，那么任务导向，自组织是吧？所以效率极高。特别是这个私人巡逻小组，它是这个应该是最小的作战单元，分工特别明确，同时又技能互补，这个非常敏捷的一种组织架构。其实这是我们今天现代企业应该说，非常重要的，从敏捷的这个角度来讲，特别好的这样一个学习的一个典范。所以，其实我对这个 SAS 的这个组织架构以及它背后的组织哲学是特别的感兴趣。我相信很多的这个读者呢，对这块也是会特别的这个认可，因为这是在我看来是代表未来组织发展一个很重要的方向。所以您能不能介绍一下这个 SAS 在具体的组织架构和运作机制上，它怎么能够保证这样一种既赋予前线最大的行动自由，那么同时呢又不失整体的协调和资源整合能力，能够完成上级赋予的任务我觉得这个是特别有意思的一部分。
Yeah, so there are several aspects to the question, I think. At the personal and the organizational level, I'll talk briefly about the organizational level first. So the SAS is a flexible organism. So very often a group of people, perhaps 12 or 14 people, will be put together in a team task. So for example, if a friendly government wants assistance training their police or their bodyguards or an anti-narcotics operation, the SAS may create an ad hoc team with people with different skills, like languages or a particular paramilitary expertise or something that relates to the task. So although you have the patrol, the troop, and the squadron as the basic organization, the organogram, if you like, the regiment is completely reconstituting itself according to the requirements of individual deployments. And sometimes you'll have a small team, as I say, sometimes you'll have a complete squadron deploying on rotation into a war zone or on a counter-terrorist training cycle, for example. But the whole principle is that you can continually reconstitute and you can have different groups of people. The other thing at the individual level, and I mentioned this previously, I don't know whether in the Chinese market you ever see the TV program. In the UK, in Australia, there's a TV program called Who Dares Wins. And in this program, lots of people run around shouting, which is a bit more like the US Navy SEALs or the infantry. But the whole point of the SAS is there's no one shouting at you. And typically when you're selected, you know, you will be alone on a mountainside in the snow, in the dark, hungry with no sleep, and there's no one to shout at you and there's no one to encourage you. And the question is, are you capable of being self-contained, of being self-disciplined, of navigating through difficult terrain and so on your own? And there's quite an important principle behind that, which is that each individual subcomponent of the SAS is capable of being deployed as one person or in a pair, you know, maybe to work with Secret Intelligence Service or as a patrol and so on. So there's an ability to be flexible and to reconstitute yourself. And when I think of business, there are increasingly examples of that same philosophy. So for example, in Silicon Valley now, instead of having traditional organization charts, you quite often have people being calibrated as like an engineer level 1, engineer level 2, level 3, level 4. And the principle behind that is that this person has a selection of skills and competencies, and they can be repurposed according to the requirements of a company at any particular point in time. At a larger level, you also have companies like Gore, the manufacturer of Gore-Tex fabric, who've been around since the 1950s. And they have always taken a philosophy of reconstituting teams when they introduce new projects. So they don't just go for the most senior person. They'll start with a blank sheet of paper. They'll figure out, who is available to lead and to manage, for example, a new product introduction. And they reconstitute the organization to deliver against that defined objective. So I think this dynamic way of working is becoming more and more relevant to how companies are functioning, particularly in high technology companies.
对，这个 SAS 这种组织模式啊，因为它强调的是授权，强调的是独立做决策，是吧？更多的是要独立去完成任务。其实这个对于成员的素质，包括他们这种担当的这种意识，主动担当的意识，其实是要求是特别高的。所以我对你这本书的还有一个地方印象特别深，就是您讲到的 SAS 的领导力的一个核心的理念，就是人人都是领导者，没有搭便车的，是吧 ？SAS 关于领导力方面的一个非常重要的一段话，就是要么带头，要么跟上，要么让开。我觉得都是非常精彩的。最合适的人会自然成为情境领导，谁最合适，谁可能成为领导。其实对于组织来讲，这条是特别难的。您能不能再详细介绍一下，在 SAS， 就人人都是领导者，还有要么带头，要么跟上，要么让开，这两句话它的基本内涵究竟是什么？就他为什么要提出这样一个领导理念？它的背景是什么？那么这样的理念能够给团队带来什么样的优势？包括 SAS 是怎么做到这一条？
So there are some sayings in the regiment. Another one is speed, aggression, surprise. The SAS means speed, aggression, surprise, and then lead, follow, get out of the way. I mean, they both convey a spirit of kinetic energy. So the philosophy behind them is like, we need to move fast. We need to move decisively. We need to be coherent and slick in the way that we work. So that's the thinking behind it. But as a way of working, it's quite interesting because each of those components represents a different thing. If I start with getting out of the way, that might sound like a very negative thing, but I mean, I've been in business for 30 years. Everyone who's been in business has been in a meeting where somebody is talking and you're thinking, why are they talking? They're not really contributing anything to this discussion. They are just, establishing their status, or they're making a political point, and they're not really contributing anything very much. So there is a benefit in simply not interfering or time wasting. At the macro level, there is a benefit in a headquarter function or a regional headquarter function having a very precise understanding of its value added. So in the SAS, the headquarters is all about R&D, it's all about training, it's all about selection, it's not about interfering in people on the ground. So that's the getting out of the way aspect. The leadership we've talked about, the leadership philosophy is, I'll get in trouble with you guys for saying this, but I mean, I had a good relationship with the Confucius Institute, and I was told that the Confucian interpretation of leadership is very much situational and very much something that is not highly personal. Let's say it's something that you take on by virtue of what is needed by the circumstances. Whether that's a good interpretation of Confucianism, I have no idea, but I like it as an idea. So it's a shared resource, and different people, either at the micro level because they're laying a demolition charge, or they're doing something where they're best in the place to direct what's going on, or a little bit more strategic. Somebody has deep knowledge of a particular situation or market, and a country, and they want to shape the way the mission runs. So leadership is a more flexible, inclusive force for good, not a personal ego. And again, I think this is quite an important point, because so much of the conversation in business is about larger than life characters, billionaires, about people who we admire. But leadership in the SAS is not about admiring individual people. It's about a kinetic energy. So that's the leadership bit. And then followership is also a discipline. And, actually some cultures are much better at followership than others. in the West, there's a tendency away from followership, because there's a feeling amongst the business community that if all I do is say, yes, I agree with you, I'm going to support you, that somehow that's less value adding than if you can somehow take a slightly separate and contrarian position. And the magic of lead, follow, get out of the way is, exercise judgment to be clear on when the best thing you can do is just to add energy and to be part of what's happening, rather than to feel you always have to be questioning every last assumption. And this is very important in an organization full of leaders. So if you have a meeting and everybody wants to be a leader all the time, that's quite dysfunctional. So you have to separate, when should I lead, when should I follow, and when should I just get out of the way? That's the idea.